is this actually the way things work? Am I making this up? Am I just a part of the? And so having those conversations, you know, where it's like, I doubt too, buddy. I don't know. I don't know. We're here. This is what we've chosen to believe as a family. We see God in different areas. But ultimately, we have to choose.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a question I probably need to ponder, and I imagine a lot of the listeners that you guys have, all 6 of them, probably need to.
How'd you know?
Well, I've been following.
2 of them are here.
2 of them are here.
We're down to 4.
We got 4.
Yeah.
Welcome to Processing Purpose, a business and lifestyle podcast committed to having honest conversations about the stuff in our lives that is often suppressed, ignored, or overlooked. We are 2 brothers from very different backgrounds, but with one common goal. From entrepreneurship to relationships, from hobbies to house projects, nothing is off limits as we process becoming the best version of ourselves in business and life.
We're back.
Let's just start like that. We're back!
We're back!
Hey.
And
well, technically,
I'm back.
3 are back, and 1 is, I'm here.
I'm officially in.
And many of you may not know, but he's the one that we actually made a comment about on that episode, stating, I think you stated,
Yeah.
he may never make it on the show, which I didn't think that. I really believed you'd be here someday. And you are here.
I've been praying for 2.5 years now, even before the podcast started.
You earned it.
Thank you.
You really earned it, mainly because of the hat.
It's great to be here.
Well, welcome.
Long-time listener.
And thanks for joining us.
Yeah, long-time listener, first-time caller.
Yeah. Right?
Here
So
I
we
am.
got Troy Reedy back in the house. If you guys remember, it was an episode on leadership back in season 1, and you decided to grace us with your presence again.
I'm here. Yeah,
Thanks for joining us.
of course.
And actually, do you mind just giving us a quick update on, I mean, you were, I believe, coaching a different team or maybe coaching a new team now, or things have changed a little bit since then. What does your world look like now in terms of coaching and leadership?
No, I'm still involved with the university.
Nice.
And yeah, I took on a summer team that just finished a week ago, and all of my family was cheering that we would lose the game so that we could join everyone in Leavenworth for this week.
Cool.
So, yeah.
Nice. Very cool.
And Tyler, for the first time on the show, thanks for joining us. So Tyler from Denver, 2 young daughters,
Yes.
beautiful wife, physical therapist, pretty much crushing life in every aspect of the term.
Yeah.
Has decided to grace us with his presence today. We jest, but in all seriousness, it's great to have you.
Oh, it's
on
fun
the show.
to, yeah, it's super fun to be here, and what a special gift to have the 4 of us together in one room.
It's pretty unique for, at least I feel like it is, for 4 brother-in-laws to kind of mesh and gel and be as good looking as the 4 of us.
Oh, God. I'm glad you just got that out of the way.
Yeah,
Luke.
well,
thank you.
I just wanted to state the obvious.
Yeah.
When I share our relationship with people, they absolutely validate it. Is special. It's like, whoa, you guys, A, get along, and B, you guys go out and do stuff together. Like,
Right.
you guys actually participate in each other's lives. It's pretty rare, actually. I'm finding.
Yeah.
Oh,
pretty special.
super rare, I think, in our world today. I was talking to a handful of my patients this week about the week, and they were like, well, make sure you stock up with the booze, all that family. And I'm like, no, actually, we really enjoy being together. And I got a lot of eyebrow raises.
What?
Yeah. I've had 1 beer so far. That's it.
This morning, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Right. I shotgunned it before I turned on the mics.
Perfect. Wonderful.
Oh, today's topic,
Fatherhood.
fatherhood.
We're going to talk about being dads, and your hat is perfect fit for this topic. We're all
Sponsored by Fly Dads.
Fly Dads Collective. Yeah, a buddy of mine who I work out with started this company, and it's all about empowering dads to really invest in their kids' lives. So
Nice.
kick off the topic.
I love it.
Yep.
I love it. So here's kind of where I want this to go. Like, I want to just create kind of a foundation of what does fatherhood mean for you? Like, in other words, with your lens, like, what do you feel is your role in your kid's life from a really high level? I'd also love to touch on how your dad influenced that. Okay, what you bring forward and what you decided to go, I can do better than that. Because I think we all, maybe as a society, right, try and take it to the next level. So and I hope our kids do too, right? That we get that as they start becoming fathers, they go, it was great, but I'm going to do it a little bit different. I'm going to do it this way, and here's why. And so I want to touch on that as well. And then from there, let's see where it goes.
Love it.
Sound good?
Love it.
Let's start, since you got the mic, Ty.
Wonderful.
And thanks for swinging that mic back and forth. We had a mic failure today. We had one go down. So
Yeah. All
Well,
good
we're going to
though.
make it roll.
so thanks for being flexible with that.
Of course.
What do you think your role is? How would you define your responsibility as a dad in your daughter's lives?
Yeah, so I've got 2 daughters, and I think the good Lord above knew that that's exactly what my big ego needed. I always kind of knew from the beginning that I would be a girl dad, and I always thought, I'll go out and play football toss with the boys, but God had different plans, and so being a dad of 2 daughters has been extremely, extremely fun.
Yeah.
And has also brought some challenges, but at the end of the day has humbled me probably more than anything in my life. And I think for me, setting an example of how women should be treated and how their mom should be treated is one of the greatest gifts that I feel like I can give them as their father.
That's good.
Have I failed? Absolutely. Just a few times.
Sure.
But yeah, so I think, certainly you can parent and use words, but at the end of the day, I think my kids are such sponges, as most kids are, and what they see, they will remember more than what I say.
Yeah.
So that's kind of baseline, and we can kick it off from there. But yes, I think
So modeling, if we wanted to put it in a context or in a box framework, it would be modeling.
Yeah.
Yep, I can say all the words I want,
Yeah.
and oftentimes they're not the right ones. But I've challenged myself to just lead without using words, and again, have failed over and over again. But in the times that I have got it right, you can tell that the girls pick up on that pretty quick.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's great. Same question, Troy. How do you view fatherhood, your role? What's your responsibility in that as you, opposite, raise 3 boys?
Mm-hmm. Yep. I've got 3 boys, a 15-year-old, 13-year-old, and 11-year-old.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that was the first word that came to my mind as well was modeling. Modeling in the way of how you love your spouse, how you interact with friends, how you engage the world. And then the other thing is just being, the gift of presence, being present to your children in the many steps and the many winding rivers, roads of their own journey. Each of us, you don't get to go rewind and be a father to your same kid again. So in some ways, we're on our own journey as fathers with very unique personalities of each of our own kids. But yeah, I think that kind of the picture of old school picture, but the shepherding component of walking alongside your kids into the various spaces and places that they wander.
Do you find, let's stay with you, do you find that you have to change the way you father as you look at your different kids? Is it all the same, or do you have to do it uniquely?
No, very uniquely. Uniquely. Yeah.
Give me an example of and I know that's kind of off the cuff, but do you have something that pops in your mind? It goes, I would have handled it this way with this kid, but this way with the other kid.
I think our oldest is kind of an old soul and is just built to he would prefer being in a room with adults than with even kids his own age, talking through deeper things. And so with him to draw things out, it takes very little effort. Whereas with the other two, there's different tact of trying to figure out different ways to ask questions, or sometimes it's like before that space will even surface, it's going and doing an activity and having fun before they're kind of warmed up to like, yeah, talk about something that may be going on at a deeper level.
Yeah. The connection, it's interesting that you say that, because the connection, and I don't know if you can speak to this too, Gavin, but one of the things I noticed, and Gavin and I are fathers of both boys and girls. And so I've got 2 boys and a girl. You've got 3 girls and a boy. But one of the things that I noticed specifically with my daughter that is different than my boys is, and it might be personality, it might be girls, I don't know, and speak to this if it piques something, but if I choose her, what I mean by that is I say yes more than no to things that I can say yes to, right? Daddy, can we get ice cream? Which seems very benign, but if it's just her and I'm saying yes to her versus my idea, or let's you and I go out and have a little date. Like, I'm choosing her versus her coming to me constantly. It changes the relationship dramatically. Like, all of a sudden I get more kisses. She tells me how much she loves me. Like, it dramatically changes the way she interacts with me.
And how does that differ from your relationship with your boys then?
I think there's an inherent draw because we're all boys. Like, there's a synergy where you still have to choose them. Like, that's not absent from that, especially since there's 2 of them and you have to, like, sometimes pick. Right. I'm going to do this activity or that activity. I'll be here with you or I'll be there with you. But because there's boys, it's a little bit more natural to do boy things. Not that Nora doesn't do boy things, but when I choose her, it changes. It changes for sure. So for whatever that's worth, choosing those moments to be like, yeah, let's do that. It changes. Gavin, what does fatherhood mean for you?
In terms of my role in feeling like I'm accomplishing it, I think if I stay in the lanes of security, and that can be in the lane of providership and protectorship, if that's a word. I think I made that up.
Sounds great.
And then the other piece of this is somewhat related, is teaching them emotional intelligence, right? I wouldn't say all mothers, but most mothers are more designed for nurturement, right? And be able to really console kids through things. And we have those qualities too. But I would say what we bring to the table is really helping our kids think better, right? A good example of that is I can't remember who said it, but I watched a video, and a guy said, you really need to think, as a parent, you really need to think about complaining differently. Complaining is not complaining like we hear from an adult. When we hear it from a kid, what we do, though, is we create this boundary. They have no other person in their life other than their parents to be able to emotional safety net, right? They don't have peers. We have peers, right? I have my brother-in-laws that I can call on any minute. I know you guys would drop everything and take my call if I really needed you.
Yep.
They don't have that, right? And so when they come to us and they complain, it's really them just expressing their emotions. And the truth is, our kids don't know how to express their emotions. They're kids, right? I barely know how to express my emotions, and I'm almost 40, And so it's our job as dads specifically, I think, to get side by side with our kids and help them understand what it is to think better and understand what it is to process emotions and feelings in a healthy way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love all of that. Modeling, processing. I think the only thing that I would add would be helping them figure out what their superpower is.
Oh, I love that.
Like, what is it that their gift to the world is? How can they harness that? How can they recognize that? What does it feel like when they find it? How is that received by others? It's not a fair comparison, but I almost think of it in terms of employees. As an employer, we do something similar and that is we try and fit them in the role. What role is best for them? And when you have just the right people on the bus, but the right people in the right seats on the bus, everything hums. Gosh, if you can help your kids figure out what it is that they're here for, and that's a big statement. And I'm not sure it's easier to say that statement than it is to actually execute on that. But yeah, how to figure this thing out, how to do life. And that comes through modeling, and it comes through processing and asking great questions and all of that. But that's kind of the way I look at it, is like, all right, how can I help you find your lane in all of this? And that's sampling, and that's trying, and that's watching their enthusiasm, and then talking to them about, well, was that fun? How'd that make you feel? How did that feel better than this? Like, did you enjoy playing soccer more than you enjoyed skiing? Great, let's talk about that. Why do you think that is? Mm-hmm. Well, it was the team, or it was this, or I felt like I had more impact, or okay, why? Do you practice it more? Like, and asking the questions so that they can come to their own solutions of like why they choose to do the things they do in their life.
I'm going to throw a question in here. What is your role spiritually? And not to say ideally, but what is it currently?
Yeah.
What is your role spiritually in your family?
There's an ideal, and then there's a real. Right? We kind of have a vision of like, ideally it would look like this. And when you're on a podcast, it's easy to talk about how it should look. Then there's a real of what that actually looks like. You start, Ty. You got the mic in front of you. What spiritually, what does that look like for your family?
Yeah, I think being quick to pray with my kids for others, like at the drop of a hat. If even if it's, Kellen comes home, my youngest, and is talking about something, maybe one of her friends, her parents are going through a divorce, or there's something challenging in their life. I have challenged myself to quickly just say, let's just quickly pray for your friend, and involving them in that, so they are a part of that process. Again, we're on a podcast, so it sounds like I do it all the time. I fail a lot,
sure,
but when it does happen, it feels right, and it feels like that is leading by the spiritual example of that's the best thing we can do. We'll pray for those people. Like I try to do it when we're driving to the mountains. We were heading up to the mountains in Colorado over the 4th of July, and we saw 2 or 3 accidents, and now the kids are getting to the point where Kellen said, "Dad, can we pray for the safety of those kids?" Yeah. And so that you plant those seeds, and you start to see the fruit of the labor that the Lord is doing. Yeah. And so I think that is one thing that I have challenged myself to do. And again, I've fallen short, but it's a really quick and simple way to just invite the Lord in and to allow your kids to do it with you.
Love that. What do you think, Troy, when it comes to the spiritual side of things? How do you view leadership, fatherhood, your role in that?
Yeah. I feel like I've got to keep shifting this way. I feel like
shift back and forth.
Yeah. I've been recently kind of captivated by this pretty simplistic visual. So I'm not going to draw it on the whiteboard.
Okay.
Because it's just
draw it on the couch.
It's just a triangle. Actually, I think everyone knows what a triangle is. But it's basically kind of like we are in the way that we personally are shaped, but the role that we have as well in shaping others. You think of shaped by in the middle of a triangle. And the 3 primary, right, there's probably lots of points, but the 3 primary being, 1, the relationships that we surround ourselves with and or are involved in. 2, the just the life rhythms or habits that we build into our daily, weekly, annual, cycles. And then the 3rd is the stories that we believe. And so I think that's helpful for me to intentionally sometimes think about, okay, because there are things certainly that are in our control, and there are things out of our control. We don't pick all of our kids' teammates on teams or friends at school, but there certainly are families and relationships that want our boys to be surrounded by people living in a particular way, people that are giving themselves, to others in a particular way. And so as much as you can help shepherd and shape them by way of the relationships that they're influenced by, is a piece. The other, and there's hundreds of examples, but like, what are the regular rhythms of the family, and how are you creating spaces to allow for emotional health to be deepened. And then the third, which would be a longer conversation, but the stories that we believe.
Sure.
And you asked in particular about the spiritual shaping. I think, like, if the whatever story we live into is going to shape us. And so if I believe that actually we were created by a good heavenly Father who is massively involved and wanting to invite us into the redemption of the world, that hopefully will change the way that I live my days and communicate with people and so on. And so it's also, in a family sense, as it relates to the boys, inviting them into that story that has been taking place from the foundations of the world. And there is a backstory that now they are grafted into. And for me personally, like, that's massively motivating and inspiring and purpose filling. And so as best as I can with various ages of boys, but begin to walk alongside of them in terms of the unique way that they were created and what's your part in this meta narrative that is unfolding. And so, all three of those kind of points of the triangle, having a significant influence on how we are shaped, but how we can have a role in shaping our children, is just a helpful framework for me to sometimes stop and think about, who are the relationships that we've invited in? What are my kids understanding and living into a bigger story than just what we, and sometimes I live into a very small story, and need to be re-inspired and recaptivated by something way bigger than myself.
So good. So good. Anything to add to that? Like, I don't know
He
how
just always takes it to this super deep philosophical level, and I'm like, I got surface answers. Although the only thing I'll build on is a little bit more vulnerable stance. Is I'll just be honest. I don't feel like I'm doing it well. I don't. I want to be a better spiritual leader for my kids. Have I prayed with my kids? Yeah. Do I do it regularly? No. Do I get into the Word with them? No. Do we go over scriptures at times? Yeah. Here and there. So Jesus is in our home, but is he the nucleus of the home? I don't know. I would love to believe that, but I don't know if it's actually true. Brooke and I often talk about our relationship with Jesus being very intimate and personal to us. But saying it that way, it feels like it's kind of preventing us from opening that relationship up corporately within the home. And so I feel like there's a healthy sense of spiritual conversation in the home, but there's not enough, what's the word I'm looking for lack of a better way to say it, just meat to the subject. Right. Yeah. And so I want to add more of that to my parenting, the way I father my kids. But if I'm being honest, I think I'm doing a subpar job.
I actually love that answer, to be real frank, because I think more people are gonna go, oh yeah, that's me. I think, to be honest, than like they're doing it well. Yeah. And so I really appreciate the transparency with that. I think the only thing I would add,
and actually, can I just ask
please,
can you guys help me with that? That's the one thing I'd ask as brothers, just check in with me on that from time to time. Say, how's that going in the home? And it'll hold me accountable to pay attention.
You can do the same with me as well.
Love it.
Yeah.
Done.
It's great. I think the only thing I would add would be the way I view it is to help them think critically.
Yeah.
and foster that though with a sense of faith, because sometimes those can be opposing forces. We can get too logical and we remove the faith from it. And I think sometimes we get so faith-centered that we blindly follow without like processing the critical side of it. And so I've got an incredibly philosophical son. Like he asks like deep, like, Dad, have you ever wondered who's actually on the inside seeing out of your eyes?
Wow, he is
Your
Buddha.
answer is mom.
I was like,
That's your mom.
I'll get back to you.
Right.
But it's true. And so for me, this really shows up in kind of the doubt categories when it's like, we talk about this, we try and do a nightly devotion. I would say we're 50% of the time we're doing that. We pray with the kids nightly and try and bring in those. One thing that I do that I think is kind of fun is that, so we're a part of our health program is one of the health sharing ministries versus health insurance. And so it's where you essentially share the burden of somebody else's expenses.
Yeah.
And you actually write that person a check. And then conversely, they write you a check when you have a need. And it's worked out famously. But what's really cool about that is you know who you're writing it for and what you're writing it for. So monthly, when we write this check to Harold, who just had gallstones removed or something like that, we talk about it.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I just wrote this check today. Let's pray for Harold that he heals up fast. And so it's just another way to kind of bring in, kind of that aspect. But, coming back to the doubt piece, I see this show up often with like we talk about this, but how do you know?
Mm-hmm.
And the truth is you don't. Like we can kind of know, we have sense, we feel, we experience, we see. It's kind of like the wind, right? We've heard that analogy. You don't see the wind, but you can see the effects of it. So you have those conversations, but I think very few don't doubt. Don't have moments where it's like, man, is this actually the way things work? Am I making this up? Am I just a part of the? And so having those conversations, where it's like, I doubt too, buddy. I don't know. I don't know. We're here. This is what we've chosen to believe as a family. We see God in different areas, but ultimately we have to choose.
Yeah.
And to kind of think critically about some of those things is the only other thing that I would bring to the table of the conversation.
One other snippet that I find myself doing often, we're a very active family.
Yeah.
My girls, we're in the mountains skiing a lot. Girls play competitive sports. We are always on the go. And I think this day and age, raising kids with all the outside noise, living in an area where it's an affluent community, approaching things with gratitude has been a really good way to kind of check in and just check ourselves. And so we've made it a rhythm as a family. Like every day we ski, we get to the top, and I don't even have to initiate anymore. Bryn or Kellen will say, Dad, we got to pray for the day and thank the Lord for everything. Look around us. And so I think just those small checks of gratitude, even being in the mountains these last few weeks, when we were up at the 4th of July, same thing. It's like, let's just stop for a minute. And my wife is really good at this as well. Like we may be, at a mountain alpine slide, or a jumpy castle up in Copper Mountain.
Sure.
And my wife's like, before we do this, let's take 1 minute to just realize how grateful and blessed we are, because the outside noise is that everybody's doing it, but not everybody's doing it. A very, very small percentage of people get to do what they do.
Totally.
So I think that's been a good, just checking point constantly along this journey, for the kids to see and realize. So
is gratitude, let's just stay there for a second because it popped into my head. Is gratitude a decision or is it a feeling?
I think it can be both.
Okay.
Does
one lead to the other? Or does it exist on different levels depending on the experience?
I think it can be both. I think there's times that I just feel grateful.
Yeah.
It just is natural. And then there's times that you just have to decide to be grateful. And I think oftentimes that's when you're in the valleys. But I think in those, I mean, we've talked about this, right? Oftentimes just in a relationship or life or in business, you have to, even when I'm in the trenches, treating patients or managing a staff of 12 or on call with surgeons or business partners or whoever it may be. When you're in the trenches, a lot of times I have to choose being grateful. And I'll pause throughout the day and look around and see the staff that I have and the patients that are improving and smiling and getting better and getting back to the activities they love. And then it becomes a feeling for me.
It's easy to get lost in you were talking about rhythms, Troy. It's easy sometimes to get lost in we got to go to soccer practice. I got to coach. I got to do this. But to remember that we are privileged to even have those options.
Sure.
And it's easy to get lost in the day-to-day rhythm of like, this is what we do. And to zoom out that, we have the healthy body to be able to go even do that. Or,
Totally.
We have a friend here in town, Icon, that, and we don't need to go deep into this, but very active, rides motorcycles, and he had a motorcycle accident and everything in his life changed. Everything.
Yeah, he's in a nursing home now.
Wow.
And so we're one decision, and not even necessarily ours, away from somebody else's decision from everything being different in our life. And so, anyways, I just thanks for chiming in on that. Let's pivot. Let's talk about our dads.
Can I ask one question before?
Yeah.
I'm a guest on the show. I get to do whatever I want. It's just the way it works, right?
That's right.
Yes, it is.
I mean, this is certainly going to be projecting potentially into the future, but I'm just curious, with the desire and the intent to lead our families and help help shape our kids holistically, spiritually. I think, our boys are getting older, and to date, all of them have continued to live into the kingdom, the God narrative. But there's no promise or assurance that will happen. And we've certainly, there's various distractions and challenges, right, with young kids, where if you're trying to facilitate a time or create a space, they're like, I'm so bored. Like, when do we get to do something else?
Yeah.
So I guess the question, which, like I said, is a projection for potentially later, but thinking about situations where your kids then are like, no, I don't want this, or, what does that look like?
Yeah.
Right. And where, what's the balance of, what's the balance of continuing to provide space for them to authentically feel, and or have the doubts or life circumstances that are very hard and challenging and inevitable.
And I think there's a couple of different interesting layers there, because my hope is that because we all came from a similar spiritual foundation from day zero with our kids, that we've created through the frameworks that we talked about, modeling and helping them process and things, that those conversations, it doesn't all of a sudden happen. It's starting, and you see the threads and you're talking about it. So my hope is that we've created that foundation, but I think there's going to be a lot of people out there that maybe start a spiritual journey later in life, right? And where all of a sudden they're choosing to go a different direction, and their family, maybe a spouse even, is like, you're a loon. And I think that's a whole lot harder to navigate than it is creating an environment in the home where doubt's okay, hard conversations are okay,
that's good.
Asking questions that there may not be answers to, and being okay with there not being answers to them is okay, and a part of this as a part of this life, and yet we still choose. And so I'm naive to the fact that could happen, right? Because I'm hopeful that we foster some of those things early.
Yeah.
But I think this is going to sound so cliche-ish, but it's true, is like love.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think if you come at it from just a basis of like, regardless of what you choose, I love you.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't change.
Mm-hmm.
And have that just be the foundation of like, hey, if you want to talk, let's talk. And if you just need to do it, like, you figure it out. But I love you regardless of what you choose, and not over spiritualize things. If they're in a space where they're like, I'm not feeling this like you're feeling this, Dad.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Yeah.
I had seasons like that.
Totally.
I might be in one today.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So let's be real.
Yeah.
And I think the reality of it, I think, helps.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, that's a question I really haven't pondered all that much. I
Sure.
think just kids being young, you know, and being in the church or, you know, around other kids that are doing the same types of things. But my quick thought is I would probably just ship him over to Moses to Portland and just let him
I think he
let
called
him
you
take
Moses.
on. But I think, I mean, and we'll probably touch on this, you know, you always hear it takes a village. And
Oh, yeah.
I guess I would want to talk through, you know, maybe today a little bit about what our role as even uncles or you
interesting.
know, family,
Sure. Right,
and
right.
how we impact, you know, how I impact your kids, Gavin, or how you impact my kids,
Yeah.
and vice versa. So
Yeah,
that's a question I probably need to ponder, and I imagine a lot of the listeners that you guys have, all 6 of them, probably need to.
How'd you know?
Well, I've been
Well,
following.
2 of them are here.
2 of them
so
are here.
We're down to 4.
We got 4.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think it's probably a question that we all, you know, really need to think through, because at the end of the day, I've seen it in my wife's family. She was raised in the Lutheran church, and she's got a brother who is fairly agnostic, and a sister who's pretty atheist. She loves them, but I know it is very challenging on her parents.
Yeah.
And so I think it's very relevant.
Yeah. Because I think that could go beyond just spirituality and
For
spiritual
sure.
doubt too, right? You look at the world we live in right now, and I don't need to get into specifics of topics, but people are choosing their lives maybe differently than they have historically, whether that's who they love or what gender they are, right? And there's a lot of different things that are going on right now that create confusion in our youth. And to think that our kids are going to be immune to that, I think, is naive. You know, hopefully through the modeling and some of these things, we have these conversations before it ever becomes family drama. But we don't really know. We don't really know. So, yeah, it's good.
I know we're gonna get. Did you have anything else to add, Gavin?
No, I was going to ask kind of another one-off question at some point, but it doesn't need to be right now. It can be addressed at any point, unless you had a point you want to.
No, I was gonna ask some one-off questions before we got to talking about our own dads as well. So maybe we should do a couple one-offs.
Yeah,
go for it.
The one question I was going to ask is, you know, I think it's one thing for us to share our thoughts and feelings, but it's probably another to be somebody else listening in and watching. These are 4 pretty confident guys, right? Like, I'd say all 4 of us, if I think about confident men, you guys are all confident men. There's dads out there that don't feel that way, right? We'll share our vulnerabilities like I did throughout the podcast. But what advice would you share with a dad that's just not feeling that confident right now? It's maybe feeling like he's fallen short, or maybe lost his identity a little bit. I talked about it on previous podcasts, but the truth is there's a real significant epidemic going on with a lack of or a loss of identity in manhood, right? There just is. Like, if you research will show it all over the place. I'm not making stuff up. Suicide in men is up 5x in the last 10 years. It's wild. And I think it's attributed to, and other researchers think it's attributed to, lack of identity, right? That men have lost their identity in the home. And part of that is men have been the provider traditionally for the last 50, 60, 70 years in America, right? In our capitalist society. But ever since the 80s, 90s, women kind of had a choice, right? Before then, they needed a man to provide. Nowadays, not so much, right? They're 2 out of 5 homes now, woman is the main provider in the home. And so they can pick and choose whether or not they want a man, and men are losing sense of their role and identity in the home, and that's causing major issues. I think there's more men out there like that than not. I think we might be actually a little bit more rare. And I'd love to share any thoughts of wisdom for any man out there that might be struggling.
Confidence, yeah, for sure. Insecurities, yes, for sure. I've got them both.
Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
That's important for people to hear, you know?
Yeah,
and
I
think that's an important baseline, is that it's not unique and you're not alone.
not at all.
Yeah, it's really good.
I think regardless of how confident we may or may not appear behind a microphone or on a camera or in a conversation, like, there's deep insecurity for myself.
Sure.
You know, and it may not be in one area, but it shows up in another area, right? And on some level, it's the human existence.
Yeah.
You know, it's seasons where you feel like you're crushing and you've got this thing figured out, and it's seasons where it's like, I know nothing.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the ebb and flow of things.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I'm willing to share, if you guys don't mind, for a minute. Just
Please.
You know, we talked about last night, you know, throwing this thing together this morning and what a privilege it would be to do. And when we talked about just the raw, authentic, what it means to be a father, it quickly came to my mind one of the insecurities that I have really struggled with through competitive youth sports. I was always an athlete. I was always a good athlete.
Still are.
But I was a hothead. If I could go back and apologize to every single coach that ever coached me, I probably would. I actually have been able to do a few of them.
Yeah.
But I'm more sensitive to that now with youth sports and the chaos and craziness that some of these parents bring.
Yeah.
And so for me, I still, it's better, but I still struggle with, are my kids good enough? And are they going to make this team? And what can we do, you know, to get them to this next level? And I constantly have to check myself. And I've had deep conversations with my wife to tell her, keep me in check, to make sure that we are doing this for the right reasons.
yeah.
This is to build strong women who are able to work with people that they don't choose, like we talked about earlier.
Yep.
You don't choose to be on that person's team. You made a team, and those are your teammates. You love 3 to 5 or 7 of them, but there's those 1 or 2 that may be challenging for you, just like you may join a real estate team like we're here, you know, here in the studio, and there might be somebody that you don't jive with. How do you navigate that? And so it's really, for me, it's constantly checking, okay, why are we driving an hour north and spending our entire Saturday in a gym? It's not to get a college scholarship or to see my girls go make $75,000 in the WNBA. That's not what it is. It is for them to have life lessons. So there's a lot of external pressures.
Yeah.
For sure. And I think a lot of people can relate to that, you know, listening, or even, you know, you guys probably in different ways, but that is a huge insecurity for me.
Yeah.
And I've constantly had to check myself. And so in my relationship with my oldest, who's 10 and is really getting into the competitive sports now, we have really just brought it down to a baseline of the only things that I ask of her are attitude and effort, and that is it. And her success is not defined by how many points she scores in a basketball game or how many turnovers she has. It is, I tell her always, I will continue to support you and pay for this. Your mom and I will continue to do this for you as long as we see attitude and you're putting forth the effort. So yeah, that's one insecurity I have, and one way that I completely pirated this and stole this from our lead pastor at church. But he's got 3 boys that play competitive sports, and they've kind of got a symbol while they're in the game where he just taps his heart twice and they tap back. So basically, I love you, and what are we doing this for? And that's for Bryn and I. She'll be in the middle of a game and she'll turn the ball over and look up at me, and I'll give her a double heart pound, and she'll give it back and smiles back on her face. Or
Could she add the Sammy Sosa?
Yeah.
We'll talk about it later.
She corks her bats and everything. So yeah, that's a huge insecurity for me, and something that I know that as they can, because they both love sports and they are going to be good athletes. Their mom was an okay athlete, so she was a phenomenal athlete.
Yeah, all-American collegiate.
National Player of the Year.
Yeah, Hall of Fame.
Yeah, she's got her jersey retired up in Northern Colorado. So I married her for a reason, not her money. Not kidding. But yeah, so I think that's going to be something that I'll probably always struggle with.
I think anytime that we compare, that's the trap.
Yeah,
for sure.
Because I do the same thing with my kids, as I'm sure you do, and I'm sure you do. It's like I look at my kids and I might compare them to the athleticism of your kids. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, geez, like your kids are 10 years old and doing backflips and scoring 70 points in a basketball game. And I'm like, I'm not sure my kid knows how to dribble a basketball. And it feels very insecure. It does. And I think that the comparison is the trap.
I think you're exactly right. I could say the same about, looking at your kids, my nephew, who is, landing his own plane on simulators. I mean, my kids would crash that thing into a building. So, yeah.
How much of it is subconscious, right, from our own childhood and instilling almost our own childhood experiences into our kids, Like athletics.
Great transition, Gav.
Huge. What's that?
Great transition, Gav.
A wonderful transition.
But it's, you know what I mean? Like I wonder, your athletics were a big piece of your childhood. They were a big piece of my childhood too. For whatever reason, my influences have changed a little bit. But I do wonder, like, how much our child's childhood is mirroring our own in so many ways. But anyways, transitioning into our fathers and how they impacted our lives.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like, obviously we're a product of our environment, right? And that's positive and negative. What are a couple of the things? And what I think is unique is that, and I don't think we mentioned this, brothers, Troy and Ty are brothers. And
Yep.
I don't think we mentioned that at the top of the podcast.
No, we didn't.
So maybe it's the same, and I think it'll be interesting to see if it's different, But what are some of those things that you're like, man, my dad did this really well, and this is one of those things that I want to make sure that I bring forward? And maybe conversely, either in the same breath or separate, if we split it, however we want to do it, like what's something where your dad came up short?
I'm going to let Moses start.
Okay. Moses. Wow. No pressure.
I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is, and I don't know if it's been shared on previous podcasts, but our dad passed away 8 years ago. So there may be moments of emotion.
Sure.
Please.
You're okay with that?
Sure.
Yeah, I think one of the greatest strengths of our dad was he was just the ultimate servant. And what feels like in a very intentional way was always, especially when we were young, and this may dovetail into some of the things that I think was not his strength, but I think as kids, he was just like the most amazing father of young kids in terms of being present to play catch or soccer or boating experiences or reading book, all of those things. And certainly that's the servant heart carried its way all the way through to the final moments of his life. I mean, one of the memories that will forever be embedded within my memory of him was in the midst of him going through immense pain, multiple back surgeries, just miserable. He was a physical therapist. like Tyler. So he spent days just treating individuals. And there was a season of life where he was like, he's just in such immense pain between patients, laying down, icing his back, between patients, just anything to get through the days. And our family had served overseas in Tajikistan, and we had come back because I had some chronic health issues that were unresolved. And so we came back for a season of staying with my parents, trying kind of to identify through different medical testing and such what was going on that would solve whatever issue was happening so that we could continue to be serving overseas for an extended amount of time. And when we were back, we lived at my parents' house, and this was in the midst of his just immense pain, long days, and he would come home, have dinner, and then like, we're going back to the clinic, and I'm going to treat you, and I'm going to do everything I can to try to get you better. Yeah. And it was just, but I just saw how exhausted he was, but still choosing to serve and be available and put others, in front of himself. So yeah, there's a lot more that I could say.
Sure.
I don't know if you want the other part of the answer later.
If it feels natural, sure. And if we want to come back to it, then that's fine too.
Okay. Yeah. So I would say, for as amazing as he was in the younger years of connecting and meeting needs for that, for just that developmental reality of childhood. And I don't think it was any fault to him. I think there was a generational just lapse in how do you do this well? But I think as I got older, his strength was not necessarily being able to really engage and ask questions that drew out some deeper things for particular seasons of life that I was going through. And so like I may be entering into that with our oldest now, and that's something that I'm seeking to grow in. And even to circle back to one of the previous comments made about where people feel like, gosh, I'm just failing, I don't know what to do. I think that's always the first most important step, is just an admission of like, I don't know what to do, but then a recognition that we're not alone, and that there are probably people that have gone before us and do know how to draw out of teenagers and those going into college, or the young adults. And so I anticipate, though I have some ideas of how I'd like to still be as engaged with, because he was always engaged. But I think I want to grow in being engaged and able to keep tracking in that deeper emotional sense with my boys as they grow into becoming young adults. And I will need, I have some ideas, but I will need a lot of help as well.
That's a great
I love it.
perspective.
Why don't you go, Ty, just because obviously you guys share a father, and it'll be interesting to see. I assume it's probably the same and yet maybe a little different. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's very much the same, and I don't need to go. I mean, Troy already touched on a lot of the things, but one thing I would add is one thing that he did really, really well that probably falls under the category of servanthood is he loved my mom in a way that I aspire to love my wife. He loved the element of surprise. I love the element of surprise of my wife. She hates it. No, I'm kidding. She actually does enjoy it at times. But yeah, the creative romance, I think we got from him. I think Troy would agree with that. So yeah, I don't have much more to add. I think our Troy and I are 4 years apart.
Okay.
So, we probably saw things a little differently. Our dad went through a season of some food addiction and put on quite a bit of weight. But we saw the redemption of him losing all that weight and before he passed during a triathlon. So, yeah, I think our very similar experiences.
Yeah.
So, what about you guys? What about your dads? I want to hear more about obviously I know Ken and have met your dad Gavin, but would love to hear what you felt like you are drawing on and using, and also where you feel like they maybe fell short. And again, our kids are going to say the same thing about us
Yes,
someday,
they are.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to fall short in a ton of different categories. So,
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Gavin.
G.
My dad's greatest strengths as a child were presence, for sure. I cannot tell you one game, one event, one play, anything he was not there for. He was there for everything, even if it wasn't necessarily his day. My parents divorced when I was 8, and so kind of a division of duty, so to speak, but it didn't matter. Even if it wasn't his time, he would drop everything and come to and he was like a magic man with it too. Somehow he found a way to come to every single one of our things. Yeah. Like my brother and sister would say the same thing. I don't know when Dad wasn't there. He just prioritized us every single time, which meant the world. The other strength of his is remarkably kind and steady. He doesn't get overly excited. He doesn't get overly down about things. He just stays really even keel. And for me as a kid, that was so important because I'm a pretty excitable guy. I'm a hype guy. I'm emotional, and I still am an emotional person. And so having a dad around that can just be that kind of steady rock, it was really good for me. Where he falls short is, and it's no fault to his own. I think we could always relate our dad's shortcomings probably to their childhood and how they were raised by their father. But just not a lot of guidance in manhood. Right. And so we have talked about it often that a lot of what I'm doing today and why I'm drawn to what I do today is I feel like it's making me more of a man. Right. Like I'm getting more into backpacking and hunting and fishing and barbecuing and everything like that because I want to feel that way. I want to feel like I have that deep sense of male identity. And I wouldn't say I necessarily had a female identity beforehand because of it, but I just didn't have a rooted sense of self-esteem around that stuff, like I can do this, to be able to go out and say, yeah, I can go catch fish, right? Right now I can go hunt grouse and I can get food for my family if it really came down to that. There's a real deep sense of self-esteem for me anyways, that comes from it. And so, but I could also take that same exact scenario and say, well, it's created the identity within me today, right? As a 39-year-old man, had I not gone through that independently, maybe I wouldn't feel the way I feel today or be who I am today. And so, maybe his weaknesses in some respects are becoming my strengths.
So sense. Gavin, you talked about your dad being present. He was at everything.
Everything.
For the listeners who potentially struggle with where they're at, I suck at being a dad, or I'm really struggling in this area. Just showing up, is that a good starting place?
Absolutely. Now, the next step would be being present while you're present.
Right.
There's a lot of people that are like, difference. Well, I'm here, but I'm on my phone. And
sure.
I actually took I did a volunteer instruction for Family Lines this last Wednesday. And really nice family. Like, nothing bad to say about the family or the dad at all outside of the fact he was just on his phone like the whole time.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, I get it. You hired me to do this with your kids, not necessarily you, but be here, man. Like, be with the kids, get side by side with them, tie a knot for them, be involved in the experience so they remember you immersed in it with them, right? Involve me and I will learn. I really believe that. And so we have an obligation, I think, not just to show up, but to be present while we show up. But I would say, yes, if anything else, if you can't, right? Like some people are saying, look, I'm under so much stress. I can't be present. I'm trying, right? Finances are ruining our life or whatever else it might be, those pressures. Sometimes you can't see more than sixes in front of you and you can't enjoy yourself at the game, but maybe just being there and showing up, and actually they can look up and see dad in the stands, whether or not you're cheering him on, doesn't matter. I see dad, he's sitting there, he's watching me. Yeah, that's a big deal.
Yeah, I think
huge deal.
Yeah, I think there's a big difference between being present and being present.
Yeah,
while being there, right? And my wife is phenomenal at that, and she's very good about calling me out and telling me when I'm not. So
yeah.
In the shortcomings as a dad, that is certainly one of mine. Like, we're playing board games on a ski trip, and are you present, or are you checking your phone, or
right.
are you constantly being drawn to other things rather than just getting on the level with your kids and being present that entire time.
Yep.
So that's
we-
probably a
we often
shortcoming.
talk about it not being natural either, right? If you look at the natural world, I'd say it's organic to the human DNA because we've been in it for the last however many millennia, the family unit, right? But if you look at the natural world, fatherhood is actually rare, right? A father raising a child is rare. And so I think there is something to be said about that we have to choose to be present. Like you have to consciously be in the moment because it's almost part of our natural DNA to kind of, like other animals in the natural world, start to fade off and do our own thing. And so we have to choose to show up. I really believe that.
I think that's less about the DNA of millennia and more about the DNA of today. Because if you think about it, and let's zoom even further out, and let's go back to cavemen days.
Right.
Like, you may not have been quote unquote raising your kids like you are now, but they went with you on the hunt.
Right.
So you absolutely were modeling and helping them figure out and process the world in which they were learning about, right? So raising them absolutely was a function of days of old. You were on a horse moving cattle when you were 7. Right? You were out in the field, whatever agriculture demanded of that moment. And you were out there. And yes, there were independent moments, but dad was taking you out there because he needed your help. And so it absolutely is part of this story. And I think we've lost some of that, whether that's through a life of convenience, of technology, of advancements, but it's definitely been lost. For me and my dad, I think I bring forward a great legacy of leadership. My dad has led an organization of 10,000 plus since he was 27. And so there is a deep sense of like responsibility and obligation that comes with that. Gavin and I have talked about it before. It's easy to get into business. It's hard to get out of business. And it's easy to become a leader. Easy is the wrong word. It's just once you're in that position, getting out of that position is not straightforward. And not that he was ever trying to, but there are moments where you're like, this is what I've created. Now I'm obligated to it. And so there's a sense of just keeping your hand to the plow that I bring forward in leadership. I think the other thing is knowing what the moment requires. And what I mean by that is my dad built a huge organization between 1997 and 1987. Okay, so prior to me being born, I was born in 1980, 7 years post. And in 1987, he decided that he wanted to be more of a dad than a business leader. And what he did is he made the conscious decision to take a step back and be at all my races and go to all of my sister's figure skating competitions and be a part of it, and essentially sacrificed the business that he had. Not from a standpoint of lost it, but from a standpoint of it ceased to grow, and anything that is not growing is now dying, because there is no state of neutrality in life. You're either ripening or you're rotting. There's no middle ground. And so because he was no longer moving the ball down the field, through a natural process of attrition, his business went backwards. And he was okay with that because he felt the more important thing was to be there for us. And I deeply respect that, because that's, as a man in the business world, very unnatural. It's all about increasing the size of your empire. It's all about what's the next mountain to take. And to consciously go, no, that's That's massive.
He chose you.
Yeah. And, he grew up with a lousy father. His words, not mine. And he has said many times, I didn't know what to do. I just knew what not to do. And so I think in light of that, as those listening, they're like, I don't know what to do. That's okay. That's all right. It's going to turn out okay. You know what not to do. Start there and do the opposite. In terms of things that I hope to champion for my kids that maybe my dad had a gap in, emotional health. I don't know if that's it's in the emotion area though. Because of the way he was raised, because of his father, emotions were negative because the emotions were violent and angry and very unpredictable. What version of dad am I going to get? And I remember my dad saying many times, above all, I just want you to be predictable. And I think that it was a hedge for him. I think it was unpredictability is scary and out of control, and I don't want that. Therefore, just be predictable. Well, when you're 6, 10, 14, and dealing with all of these emotional things that need processing, being predictable means no emotion. And I think for me, it created an environment of numbness that today I still fight. It's very hard to get over enthusiastic. It's challenging. I don't get super depressed or super angry, or like I find myself staying in a very, Gavin calls it stable. And I would say it's only stable because of the work I've tried to put in emotionally. I would say 10 years ago, it would have been very numb, just void of really much up or down.
More or less a hard shell.
Yeah.
Yeah, hard shell.
Yeah. And so I want to create better emotional IQ, better emotional health with my kids because there were some consequences of that. Inability to relate and inability to really enjoy life on some levels. You can't have the lightness without the darkness. You don't know it exists. You can't have black without white. And if you have emotion at a neutral level, it's hard to really enjoy because you don't really hurt. You don't have those diametric forces to really understand the experience, the elasticity between them. And so learning to really embrace life and enjoy and laugh and celebrate and cry and hurt has been really, I would say, of my middle life has been the biggest obstacle is trying to bring that into my life and go, man, I just want to feel. And you can do it in a healthy way. It only becomes unhealthy if you let those emotions dictate your actions, right? And if you allow them to exist and you feel them, it's what makes life worth living. I don't know if that's too strong of a statement, but on some level, if you're not really loving and experiencing life, like what are you doing this for? And so I hope to bring that part more forward. And because my wife, your sister, came from, I would consider, a much more emotionally healthy family. Like she kind of forces me into that. The Reedy shenanigans is part of it. Like, I wish I could share with our audience what you guys have created over the last 2 days with our kids.
We Cue the music.
They have a choreographed dance. It's amazing.
But it's even more than that. Yes, it's choreographed dance, but it's dialogue and it's banter and it's adventure and it's you guys. I don't know if you guys can tell on the cameras, but it's silly tattoos on your face and your neck, and it's.
Wait, hey, can you show the tramp stamp?
I do have a tramp stamp that says family on my back.
He's gonna show it. Here
Oh,
we go.
jeez.
Show the wolf.
The wolf, you want to see the
Yes, you have to now.
You want to like close up or?
Alex will take. Oh my god.
But I think
Wolf, hummingbird, scorpion.
They're putting on 2 amazing skits. If anyone's familiar with Young Life, very similar, but they're doing it all out of the goodness of their heart to be awesome uncles to our kids and dads to your kids. But it's just so special. There's not many people, like you're saying, that just breathe oxygen into everywhere they go. Your family does, man.
Yeah.
You guys come from a really, really special family.
And that was the one when I met Holly. That was the thing that set her apart from anybody else that I had relationship with, and that was I felt like it was oxygen. She brought something into my life that I hadn't experienced, and it was like breathing for the first time. It was like, I don't know what this is. I just know I need more of it.
Yeah.
And so it's been good to pull me in that direction, and to have you guys loving on our kids, and you said roles of uncles. So maybe let's pivot there as we kind of wrap this up. Like to have you guys as I call them second kings, secondary father figures, uncles, but people that speak truth and life and model and laugh and challenge and will go deep if the moment requires and will make a joke and make fun. And I value you both so much, all three of you both. Likewise. So much.
It's pretty special.
It is.
Very, very cool. So how do you view your role as a secondary father, as an uncle? Is it just kind of being, or is it intentional?
You want to answer that?
No, you go ahead, G.
I personally take it pretty serious. I'm not serious to the fact of I need to like carve out time and be that authority in their life, so to speak. But I really feel a deep sense of obligation to be a really positive role model in my nephew's and niece's life. And more importantly, I try to make it a point every time I see them or every time they're about to leave, is just telling them, looking them in the eye and telling them how awesome of a kid they are, how proud I am as an uncle. I think it's really important to hear that from other adults too, other influences in your life than just your parents. And it's incredible to watch them grow and watch them all. I mean, Van and Koa and Nora, I live so close to them. I've been able to be a part of their life in such a special way. That they bring, honestly, I would say my nephews and nieces probably, like many teachers say or coaches, they teach me more than I teach them, and it's really important for
Did
me
you guys
to be
have
around them.
aunts and uncles like that growing up or not?
I did.
Not really.
Yeah.
Not really.
Yeah, my mom's brothers, my Uncle Randy, my Uncle Dan, I spent a lot more time with my Uncle Randy than I did my Uncle Dan, because I spent a lot of time on the farm. So driving combine, driving tractor, spraying weeds, like running some piece of equipment or digging some ditch or hole. And so I spent a lot of time with my Uncle Randy, who poured a lot into my cousin and I. So yeah, for sure on that note.
Yeah, the Reedy boys, I could probably speak for both of us. We didn't have that. We had my dad's sister's families were in Colorado, and my mom has one sister who they never had kids, and so we didn't really have that influence. And again, I mean, this is such a rare breed to have 4 men who love each other, have done fishing trips together, just the 4 of us without our spouses. It's pretty special and probably unique to most listeners. Probably don't have that.
Yeah.
So I'm very grateful for this group, and I think in terms of a role. I think every kid within this family, there's 12 of them, right? Between the ages of 5 and 15.
Yep.
I think they all relate a little bit differently to an aunt or an uncle. So yeah, I feel like my role is just to show up and be relatable to the ones that are really easy with, but also get down on the level. I had a blast yesterday just sitting down in my mom's playroom with Elle, your 5-year-old, playing kitchen. I sat on there for just me and her for 20 minutes. And that's something, my wife actually looked at me in that moment. She came down and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm playing with Elle." She said, You never play with our kids like this." And so honestly, I'm like, well, they're not 5 anymore.
Yeah.
But it was a good reality check.
Yeah.
For me to go, gosh, am I investing the time into my kids as well? But I think it is, and then to throw a completely different loop, like my relationship with Troy's boys is much different. It's deep, it's rich, but it's also, physical. Let's wrestle. Let's get wild. I'm kind of the crazy Uncle Tyler that, will jump off anything or,
Literally was talking about jumping off stuff before we recorded.
Well, yeah, yes, I was. So yeah, I think our role is just to be ourselves because we each bring, something different to the table. I can't, I'm not Moses. I'm going to bring Moses in to speak life. But truly the example like that Troy sets for the way that he coaches and fathers his kids and loves his wife, I hope that my girls get to see more and more of that.
Yeah.
And the way that Luke leads in his home and the way that he loves his wife and his girl and boys, I hope that my kids see it. And the same thing for Gavin, his love and adventure for life and being in the outdoors and just on the go and always doing things for people and serving people. I hope my kids see more of that.
Thanks, man.
So
Means a lot, Judas. Just kidding.
Moses and Judas. Wow.
Wowza. That one stung, but I will take it.
Had to do it. All right. What about you?
Yeah, I think just naming the reality that, you two are way better set up to have deeper, longer standing influence on one another's kids because you live in proximity and you just log way more hours with one another's kids. And so like that is a gift, in terms of that, the triangle, you have that piece as part of the relational piece with one another. Whereas, my time logging with you or with all 4 of us together is pretty limited, and so you do the best you can. And this is like the intentionality to, in the chaos of everyone's summer, to be able to carve out 5 or 6 days to where we are congregating in a same city and enjoying time together and all the side conversations, but also the fun, random, skits and things. Those do have an impact, but I think it's, just the reality of if, we have no immediate family that lives in our city, but we have family that we do very intentional life with, as a means toward being shaped and helping to shape, one another.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there was something else that totally slipped my mind, but yeah, I think I was going to say, and Tyler may have mentioned it a little bit, but there's also, because we live at distance, one of the things that we're doing with our boys is when they turn 13, having kind of a special trip, both son and dad, and then a separate one, son and mom. And so a few years ago, Miles and I went and spent like almost a full week with Uncle Tyler. And that was very significant, rich time that will pay dividends for years to come. And we purpose to do similar things with the other boys. And so you do what you can, but if you don't, if there's not a natural, if you don't live 5 minutes away from one another, the encouragement would be like, you have to be proactively intentional about that, in the similar way, like the choice that your dad made, Luke, that was so counter cultural
Yeah.
to what the world does.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's so much of shaping and so much of life is sometimes having to make choices that are very different than the way that the world is moving.
Yeah.
So
Big time. How about you? Did you already cover?
No, I think honestly, coming back to, vulnerabilities, like I show up. I don't know how present I am. I was thinking about this with your boys specifically as I was sitting on the couch, and Miles wasn't feeling good the first day, but I was sitting there, and he sat down next to me, and so I asked him a handful of questions before I got derailed by Bill to go do something. And
Thanks, Bill.
yeah, and
From mowing the lawn, right?
he's not one of our 6 listeners, so
No.
it's fine.
Thank goodness.
And as I was asking him questions, I realized, gosh, I don't intentionally invest like I probably should. And I don't know why. I don't know if that's just because it feels like effort, because it is. I don't know if that's because it's not that it wasn't overly modeled. Like, I had an uncle that invested, but it was also a function of me working for him, and so there was a different dynamic there. Like, the presence with him wasn't him pursuing me; it was me being on the farm. And so I don't know, but in watching the way you guys interact and intentionally invest in my kids, and I know I can do better, and I will effort to do so.
Well, I think we all can, and the recognition of that already is step one to just, you recognized it, and we all probably can do a better job, right? But we have amazing nieces and nephews.
Yeah.
It's pretty remarkable.
It is.
So.
Yeah. And everybody appreciates transparency, right? And just saying, hey, I can do better. And we talked about it, I think, a couple times ago, is no one's ever going to be mad at you for saying, I made a mistake. I'm correcting the behavior. I'm sorry. Right? Like, however that looks, right? For whatever you're trying to approach. And I think really the baseline is we're an extension of safety and security in these children's lives, right? Like, yes, we can all do better to step up and be more engaging in certain kids' lives or certain nephews and nieces' lives. But if you're an anchor in their life, right, and you got to know that to some degree, but you're an anchor in my kids' lives. There's no doubt about it. That's so much more valuable than we even think, right? Just being another safety net for them to go to if something happens or they have a big question, they don't know who else to ask. It's pretty special to at least even have the what's the word I'm looking for? The privilege of being in that position in their lives to even be asked the question, in the first place. So whether or not you believe it, you are all of those individuals in my kids' lives for sure. I know for a fact you guys are amazing anchors and safety nets for my kids. Yeah.
Well, I know I'm a guest on the podcast, but can I throw one more question out?
Last one.
Sure.
Last one. Well, I was just touching on vulnerability.
Sure.
In the home, like, do you find yourself willing to cry in front of your kids?
That's a great question.
Yes. Yeah. And I think it's because I'm intentionally trying to bring that into my house for me. I've seen my dad cry twice ever. The first time was at a kind of a Promise Keepers event, a large, gathering of people, and then on the Family Lines expedition. And outside of that, like I said, I didn't see a lot of emotion out of my dad. And so I don't hesitate. Like, if the moment
It's great.
brings it and calls for it, like, yep. I'm not a crier, but if the moment's appropriate, absolutely. Absolutely.
I think it's good for kids to see that we're human and the emotions are real.
For sure.
I don't do a great job of that. I really don't.
I wish I did.
Yeah.
I want to cry. I actually want to cry more. And I don't say that from a sense of
It's
like,
just it feels so good.
It's healthy
when it's done.
It's really healthy.
I don't think I even need to give the mic to the Apostle Paul over here because we know that he is transparent and cries.
The titles you're getting today, dude. I mean,
so unless anybody else has anything else to touch on,
I think that's a beautiful way to end. It really is, because I think it's relevant. I think a lot of guys are not maybe even taught, right, conditioned to hold it back, stiffen your upper lip, toughen up, you know. And I wasn't even really trained that way. I've talked to you about this. I haven't seen my mom ever cry.
Yeah,
that's interesting. Right? That's really interesting. Seeing my dad cry, I remember seeing him cry hysterically one time when they got divorced, and I remember thinking, I never want to feel that way.
Wow.
And I think that created some things. But I want to. I really want to. And I think you're absolutely right. I think vulnerability is the strongest stance in the world. We for some reason frame it as a weakness. It's not, right? Saying, hey, and I often tell my kids too, I love saying this over and over. When you don't have it figured out, ask for help. When you have it figured out, ask for help. We just always need help, right? We always need to stay in that vulnerable stance, keeping that one hand up, one hand down posture, right? We're helping people. We're asking for help all the time. It's human. It's who we are.
Can we wrap it up with this? Everyone gets.
Can we wrap it up with this one more question?
Everyone gets one more minute. I would love. I mean, we've covered a lot of topics, obviously, but I would love to hear just what your favorite part about being a dad is. What brings you the most joy, and then we can just wrap it up.
Love it. Love it.
Gavin,
you want me to start?
Yes.
Right now, with the season of life my kids are in, 4 through 9, it's the development. It's watching them develop and get really good at things, and watching Troy yesterday throw baseballs to Wells and watching him smack the ball around, watching Reese run around and kick the soccer ball. She's been really scared because she has a prosthetic leg. She's been really scared to try to keep up with other kids. She was doing great yesterday watching her go through that. So just seeing my kids start to get really good at things and start to get interested in certain things, it's bringing me a lot of joy, because really the journey of it all, who you become through the journey, is the point of it all. And watching my kids do that and being involved in it is really special. So I'd say for me this season, that's it. How about you?
I did score the game-winning goal on Reese yesterday. She blocked a few shots, but there's
Did you flinch at her
there's
afterward?
there's some development that still needs to happen.
She's 6, by the way.
You didn't need to say that. She's a great goalkeeper.
Yeah, one leg and 6.
Yeah. Coach.
This probably sounds overly simple, but I think the moments that I'm most grateful for and finding the most joy in is when our boys may have opportunities to be with friends or go do something else or disengage, by being in their own room, but choose to just sit in the living room as a family and talk, and there's no real agenda or a family meeting hasn't been called. Just delighting in and this may pass, but our kids love being around us, and
That's awesome.
we love being around them. That sounds maybe simple, but that feels profound as well.
Yeah,
it is
for a 15 and 13-year-old, to really love being around their mom and dad.
Because the standard today is, well, wait till they're teenagers. They're not going to be able to stand you.
Yeah.
They're going to be, and I don't think it has to be that way.
Yeah.
And that's a proof to a belief system we talked about in one of our other episodes.
correct. Yeah. Yeah. So
I love that.
Thank you for proving it otherwise.
Want me to go? I think for me, it's watching my kids go from I can't to I did it. An example of that was Nora, 8, just finished her first season of swim team, and not an incredibly strong swimmer. Okay, lap pools at this age are only 25 meters one direction, and she couldn't swim from end to end. And we wanted to put her in swim team. For us, it's non-negotiable. They are on swim team. We're just surrounded by too much water here. We've got 2 rivers that run through this area, We're at the lake. We've got the Columbia that's just a little bit away. Like there's a lot of water. And so, and being in the water is a part of what we do. And so swimming is mandatory. It's a life skill. It's a safety skill. And so there's not a better exposure than swim team, which is 5 days a week, 2 months in a row. And so, and she was like, I can't do this. I'm not doing this. And it was war for about the first 2 days. I'm not going. You're not going to make me go. And if you know my 8-year-old, when she says no,
she means no.
She will destroy you if you try and make her do something, which is it's a great skill set of hers. It's a great strength. Not in this moment though. And so we had to have conversations and force her to do it. But anyway, she went from I'm not doing this to in her first meet she got second in the 25 free, and then ended up being on the relay team after that as well. And just watching the confidence build is significant. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, I think it's, for me, same thing. Just the joy that activities are bringing out in my kids right now, whether it be school play, whether it be basketball, lacrosse, the things that they're doing, or even, skiing as a family. When our kids are very much, look at me, look what I can do, and that brings them joy. I don't know where they get that from, but they just, they love to conquer things. They love to climb on things. They love to jump off things, spin on things, and they want mom and dad to watch. And so when they conquer new fears or get to the next level, and I also think what brings me a lot of joy in this season is we are getting to the age with our oldest where she is, she is, she caught it. We're good.
Those listening have no idea what just happened.
Yeah, but that is so awesome, though.
It just caught the microphone.
It adds to everything.
White feet Reedy over there and quick hands Reedy over here.
Oh, my gosh.
But yeah, we're in a season, and we'll wrap up quick. We're in a fun season of youth sports and watching Bryn navigate her friendships with those teammates and also spending time with their parents, but also my oldest daughter specifically is really good at having different friend groups. She's got a lot of her close friends at school are not active in sports at all, probably can't, dribble a basketball or chew gum, but they just bring her a lot of joy. And when they get together, they play. And
awesome.
And they draw. And so it's fun to watch her kind of be a chameleon and, because some of the girls on her team would probably never choose to hang out with these other girls. And so just watching our girls navigate relationships has been brings me a lot of joy and is a lot of fun.
Love it.
I love it.
I'm still laughing.
I know the fact that he's just holding the microphone. We had to set up a second camera. This has been
so good.
This is the way life
awesome.
goes.
Perfectly imperfect, as I like to say.
Yeah.
That's
Can
the
we
way it
talk
is.
for another 4 hours so we don't have to go back and see that family that we've said is so awesome?
Start over.
Yeah, seriously.
Thanks for being here, guys.
Oh, thank you for having us.
I love you all.
Love you guys as
I
well.
appreciate you a ton.
It truly is special.
Okay. We're out.
We're out.
We're out.
Cool. Thank you for tuning in to Processing Purpose. We hope you grabbed a few gold nuggets to take one step forward in your journey of life and business. Please remember to like and subscribe our channel if you'd like to get more content to help you build and grow everything around you. Make today your best day. Today is day one.